Marcus Thornfield stood in his penthouse office, staring at the photographs scattered across his mahogany desk. His private investigator had done thorough work, too thorough. Each image showed his wife, Elena, with another man, laughing, touching, kissing. The betrayal cut deeper than any business deal gone wrong, deeper than any financial loss he'd ever endured. He'd built an empire from nothing, clawed his way from poverty to become one of the youngest billionaires in the country, but he couldn't build a faithful marriage. "I want the divorce papers ready by tomorrow," Marcus told his attorney over the phone, his voice devoid of emotion. He'd learned long ago that showing weakness was a luxury he couldn't afford. That evening, Elena came home to find him waiting in their living room, the photographs arranged neatly on the coffee table. Her face went pale, then red, then pale again. "Marcus, I can explain." "Don't." He held up his hand, his wedding ring catching the light. "I don't want explanations. I don't want excuses. I want you gone. Please, just listen." Her voice cracked, tears streaming down her face. "You'll receive the divorce papers tomorrow. My lawyers have prepared a settlement. It's generous, far more than you deserve. Sign it and we'll never have to see each other again." What Marcus didn't see, what Elena couldn't find the courage to tell him in that moment of his cold fury, was the pregnancy test hidden in her purse. Positive. 2 months along. She'd been planning to tell him that very night, before everything fell apart. "There's something you need to know," she whispered. "The only thing I need to know is when you'll be out of my house." He stood, buttoning his suit jacket with mechanical precision. "My driver will take you wherever you want to go. Don't be here when I return." Elena watched him leave, her hand instinctively moving to her stomach. The man she loved, had loved, was walking away, and the words stuck in her throat like shards of glass. How could she tell him now? He'd think she was lying, trying to manipulate him into staying. The photos were damning, even though the truth was far more innocent than they appeared. Her colleague David had been helping her plan Marcus's surprise birthday party. The intimate moments were choreographed shots taken out of context by someone who wanted to hurt them both. But Marcus hadn't given her a chance to explain. And now she carried a secret that would bind them forever, whether he wanted it or not. 3 weeks later, Elena signed the divorce papers in her sister's small apartment, her hand trembling as she wrote her name. She'd tried to reach Marcus, tried to tell him about the baby, but his assistant blocked her calls, and his lawyers threatened her with legal action if she attempted to contact him directly. The settlement money sat untouched in her account. She didn't want his money. She wanted her child to have a father. But Marcus Thornfield had made his choice, and it didn't include her. As she pressed her hand to her growing belly, Elena made a choice too. She'd disappear. She'd raise this child alone, far from the man who'd loved her once and now hated her with equal passion. Her son, the ultrasound had revealed a boy, would never know the father who'd rejected him before he was even born. Marcus, meanwhile, threw himself into his work with renewed ferocity. He expanded his business empire, acquired 3 new companies, and systematically removed every trace of Elena from his life. He burned the photographs from their wedding, donated her clothes, and sold the penthouse they'd shared, moving into a sterile modern apartment that held no memories. He told himself he was fine. He told himself he was better off. He told himself that the emptiness he felt was just temporary. That time would heal the wound Elena had carved into his heart. He was wrong on all counts. The charity gala was the kind of event Marcus normally avoided. Too much small talk, too many people wanting pieces of him. But his company was the primary sponsor, and his PR team insisted on his attendance. He stood near the bar, nursing a scotch and counting the minutes until he could leave. That's when he saw the boy. He was around 5 years old, standing beside the catering table, eyeing the desserts with the serious concentration only a child could muster. Dark hair that fell across his forehead in a familiar way, sharp, intelligent eyes that seemed too knowing for such a young face. The shape of his jaw, the set of his shoulders, even the way he tilted his head when considering which pastry to choose. It was like looking into a mirror that reflected his own childhood. Marcus's heart stopped. "Adrian." A woman's voice called out and the boy turned. "Stay where I can see you, sweetheart." Marcus followed the sound and froze. Elena, 5 years older, her hair shorter, her face somehow both harder and softer than he remembered. She wore a simple black dress, clearly not designer, clearly not purchased with his settlement money. She worked here, he realized. She was part of the catering staff. Their eyes met across the room and he watched the color drain from her face. She grabbed the boy's hand, Adrian's hand, and tried to move toward the kitchen. But Marcus was already walking, his long strides closing the distance. Elena. His voice came out rough, strained. She stopped, her body tense as a wire. Marcus. He looked down at the boy who stared back up at him with those uncannily familiar eyes. Who is this? We should go, Adrian. Elena tugged at the child's hand, but Adrian resisted, curiosity overcoming caution. Are you Mr. Thornfield? The boy asked. Mom showed me a picture once. You look different without a smile. The words hit Marcus like a physical blow. Answer my question, Elena. Who is he? She lifted her chin, defiance and fear warring in her expression. He's my son. How old is he? Silence stretched between them, thick and suffocating. Around them the gala continued, but Marcus heard none of it. He saw only the boy calculating the age, doing the math that couldn't be denied. How old is he? I'm 5 3/4, Adrian announced proudly. Almost 6. Marcus's world tilted on its axis. 5 3/4. 9 months after the divorce would make him. He looked at Elena, and the guilt on her face confirmed everything. You were pregnant. It wasn't a question. Marcus, please. You were pregnant when we divorced and you never told me. His voice rose, drawing attention from nearby guests. I have a son and you hid him from me for 5 years? Elena stepped in front of Adrian protectively. You wouldn't listen to me. You threw me out. You blocked my calls. What was I supposed to do? Tell me I had a child. The words exploded from him, raw and anguished. Did you think I wouldn't want to know my own son? You thought I was a cheater and a liar. Why would I believe you'd think the baby was even yours? Tears streamed down her face now. Years of grief and anger finally breaking free. You looked at me like I was nothing, Marcus. Like everything we'd had together meant nothing. So yes, I ran. I protected my son from a man who hated his mother. Adrian's small voice cut through their argument. Mom, why is the man crying? Marcus touched his face and felt wetness on his cheeks. He was crying. He couldn't remember the last time he'd cried. I'm crying because I just met you and I've missed 5 years of your life. He crouched down, bringing himself to eye level with his son. Adrian, my name is Marcus and I'm your father. The boy looked to his mother for confirmation. Elena nodded, unable to speak. I didn't know about you, Marcus continued, his voice breaking. If I had known, I would have been there. I would have been there for everything. Your first steps, your first words, every birthday, every moment. I promise you I didn't know. Adrian studied him with those intelligent eyes, processing information with startling maturity. Mom said my father was a good man who made a mistake. Are you a good man? The question pierced Marcus's heart. I try to be, but I've made mistakes. Big ones. Can you fix mistakes? I don't know, Marcus admitted, glancing up at Elena. But I'm going to try. Elena shook her head, pulling Adrian closer. No, Marcus. You can't just walk back into our lives because he's my son. Marcus stood, his jaw set with determination. You kept him from me for 5 years. I won't lose another day. I kept him safe. From his own father? What kind of... Marcus stopped himself, aware of Adrian's wide eyes watching them. He took a breath, forcing himself to calm down. We need to talk, privately, tomorrow. Elena wanted to refuse, he could see it in her face. But she also saw something that made her hesitate, the absolute resolve in his expression. Marcus Thornfield didn't make idle threats, and when he set his mind to something, he didn't stop until he got it. Tomorrow, she agreed quietly. But this doesn't change anything. It changes everything, Marcus replied, his gaze never leaving his son's face. Everything. They met at a small cafe far from Marcus's usual haunts at Elena's insistence. She arrived with Adrian, who immediately claimed the seat next to Marcus. Fascinated by this new presence in his life, Marcus had barely slept. Spending the night staring at his ceiling, his mind racing with calculations and implications and rage and grief. Hot chocolate, Adrian announced, and Marcus ordered it without hesitation, along with every pastry the boy pointed at. You're going to spoil him, Elena said softly. I have 5 years to make up for. Marcus's tone was harder than he intended. I think I'm entitled to buy my son hot chocolate. They sat in uncomfortable silence until Adrian excused himself to use the restroom, giving them precious minutes alone. The photos, Elena began without preamble. The ones you showed me. They weren't what you thought. Does it matter anymore? You still should have told me about Adrian. You're right. But you were so angry, so cold. And I tried, Marcus. I tried to call you to see you. Your lawyers threatened me. Your assistant said you'd moved on and I should do the same. She wrapped her hands around her coffee cup. I was scared and alone and pregnant. My family had disowned me for marrying you in the first place. They said you were beneath us, that you were just new money with no breeding. So I had nowhere to go except my sister's apartment, and she was barely making rent herself. Marcus felt something twist in his chest. He'd known Elena's family had disapproved, but he hadn't known they'd cut her off. The settlement money, I never touched it. It felt like blood money. I worked 3 jobs until I was 7 months pregnant. Then I worked from home doing freelance graphic design. I've been raising Adrian on my own, making sure he had everything he needed. Pride crept into her voice. He's brilliant, Marcus. He reads at a 3rd grade level. He's in advanced programs at school. He asks questions I can't answer about physics and astronomy. I want to be part of his life. Marcus leaned forward, his intensity palpable. I want custody. Elena's face went white. No. He's my son. He's been my son for 5 years while you didn't even know he existed. You don't get to swoop in and take him away from me. I'm not trying to take him away, but I have rights, Elena, legal rights, and resources you can't match. I can give him everything, the best schools, the best opportunities. I've given him love. Elena's voice cracked. I've given him bedtime stories and scraped knees that I kissed better, and nights staying up when he was sick. I've given him everything I have. You can't buy that, Marcus, Adrian returned, sensing the tension. Are you fighting? Nobody, Marcus said quickly, his expression softening. We're just talking about grown-up stuff. Is it about me? Marcus and Elena exchanged glances. Yes, Marcus admitted. It's about how we can make sure you're happy and have everything you need. I'm already happy, Adrian said matter-of-factly. But it would be nice to have a dad. Tommy at school has a dad, and his dad comes to soccer games. Do you like soccer? I don't know, Marcus said honestly. I've never really watched it. Mom doesn't like it either, but she comes to all my games because that's what moms do. Adrian climbed back into his seat. Maybe that's what dads do too. Over the next week, Marcus hired the best family lawyers in the state. He had his investigators compile everything. Every missed call Elena had made to his office, every blocked email, every failed attempt to reach him. The evidence painted a damning picture. She'd tried. She'd genuinely tried to tell him, and his own grief and anger had shut her out. But that didn't change the fact that she'd kept Adrian from him for years afterward. His lawyer was blunt. You can get full custody. Her income is unstable, her living situation is subpar, and you have unlimited resources. Any judge would rule in your favor, especially with your reputation and connections. Marcus should have felt victorious. Instead, he felt hollow. He spent more time with Adrian over those weeks, taking him to museums, to parks, to the aquarium. Each moment with his son was a revelation and a heartbreak, a reminder of everything he'd missed. Adrian's first word, book, Elena told him with a sad smile. His first steps, in her sister's apartment at 13 months. His first day of school, when he'd cried and clung to Elena's leg before bravely letting go. He's a good kid, Marcus said one evening as he dropped Adrian back at Elena's modest apartment. It was in a safe neighborhood, but far from the luxury Marcus could provide. He is, Elena agreed. He's the best thing in my life. I'm filing for custody, Elena. Her face crumpled. Please don't do this. He's my son. I'm not trying to hurt you, but I can give him opportunities you can't. The best education, travel, connections that will help him in life. You've done an incredible job raising him, but you can't give him what I can. You're taking him from me. Her voice was flat, dead. I'll allow visitation. Visitation? Of my own child? Anger flared in her eyes, the first real fire he'd seen from her. You know what this will do to him? You're not thinking about Adrian. You're thinking about yourself, about what you lost. You're punishing me. I'm protecting my son from his mother. I'm the one who's been there for him every single day of his life. But Marcus had made his decision, and when Marcus Thornfield made a decision, nothing could stop him. The legal papers were filed the next morning. The custody hearing was swift and brutal. Marcus's lawyers were sharks, presenting evidence of Elena's financial instability, her modest living conditions, her inability to provide the level of education and opportunity that Marcus could offer. They painted her silence about Adrian's existence as a pattern of deception, suggesting she couldn't be trusted to make decisions in the child's best interest. Elena's court-appointed attorney was outmatched and overwhelmed. They tried to argue that she was a devoted mother, that Adrian was happy and well-adjusted, that love mattered more than money. But the system favored stability, and Marcus Thornfield represented the ultimate stability. The judge reviewed the evidence, interviewed Adrian privately, and rendered his decision. Marcus Thornfield would receive primary custody. Elena would be granted supervised visitation every other weekend and holidays, pending review after 6 months. Elena collapsed in the courtroom. Her sister caught her, holding her as she sobbed, as 5 years of sacrifice and love were legally stripped away by a man she'd once loved with her whole heart. Marcus felt no triumph. Only a gnawing emptiness. Adrian didn't understand at first. He was told he'd be living in a big new house with his father, that he'd get his own room, that he could still see his mother. He was excited about the adventure, too young to fully grasp what was being taken from Elena. The first night in Marcus's mansion was difficult. Adrian asked for his mother 4 times, confused why she wasn't there to read him a bedtime story or check for monsters under the bed. Marcus did his best, stumbling through a story about a knight and a dragon, but it wasn't the same. "Your voice is different," Adrian said sadly. "Mom does different voices for each character." "I'll practice," Marcus promised, his heart aching. As weeks passed, Marcus hired the best nanny money could buy. He enrolled Adrian in an elite private school. He bought him everything a child could want: toys, books, a treehouse, a puppy. But Adrian grew quieter, more withdrawn. The brightness in his eyes dimmed. During supervised visits, Adrian would cling to Elena desperately, crying when it was time to leave. Elena maintained her composure during these visits, but her sister reported that she'd stopped eating, stopped sleeping. She'd lost her job at the catering company, couldn't function enough to work. She was wasting away with grief. Marcus told himself it would get better. Adrian would adjust. Elena would move on. Time would heal these wounds. He was wrong. 3 months into the arrangement, Marcus returned home early from work to find Adrian in his room, carefully packing a small backpack with clothes and his favorite stuffed elephant. "What are you doing, buddy?" Adrian jumped, guilt written across his face. "Nothing." Marcus sat on the bed. "Talk to me." "I want to go home," Adrian whispered. "I want my mom. I miss her so much it hurts my stomach." The confession shattered something in Marcus. He'd been so focused on winning, on claiming what was his, that he'd ignored the most important factor, what Adrian actually needed. "I know you miss her. Then why can't I live with her? Why does she cry every time I leave?" Adrian's voice rose, desperate. "She tries to hide it, but I see. I always see. And I hate it. I hate making her sad. I wanted to give you everything." "I don't want everything," Adrian shouted, his composure finally breaking. "I want my mom. I want bedtime stories and her singing when she cooks and the way she knows when I'm sad even if I don't say anything. I want to go home." Marcus pulled his son into his arms as Adrian sobbed against his chest. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." That night Marcus called his lawyer. "I want to reverse the custody arrangement. Mr. Thornfield, you can't just... I don't care what it takes or what it costs. I want my son to be with his mother. But you fought so hard for custody. I fought for the wrong thing." Marcus's voice was heavy with regret. "I fought to win. I should have fought for what was best for Adrian." The lawyer was silent for a moment. "There is one other option. Joint custody 50-50. It's unusual, but given the circumstances, will Elena agree to that? After what you put her through? I honestly don't know." Marcus drove to Elena's apartment that night, Adrian asleep in the car seat behind him. He knocked, expecting anger or refusal. Elena opened the door, her face gaunt, her eyes hollow. When she saw Adrian, she gasped, hope and fear warring in her expression. "I made a mistake," Marcus said without preamble. "The biggest mistake of my life. Actually, the second biggest. The first was divorcing you without listening." Elena stared at Marcus for a long moment, her hand clutching the door frame for support. "If this is some kind of game, it's not. I'm giving Adrian back to you. He shifted the sleeping boy in his arms. He needs you, Elena. More than he needs everything I can provide. You fought so hard to take him away. Her voice was barely a whisper. I was angry, hurt. I wanted to punish you for hiding him from me, but I ended up punishing him instead. And you were right. I wasn't thinking about what Adrian needed. I was thinking about myself. Elena's eyes filled with tears. Bring him inside. Marcus carried Adrian to the small bedroom Elena had prepared for visits, laying him gently on the bed. As he pulled the blanket over his son, Adrian stirred. Dad? He mumbled sleepily. I'm here, buddy. Sleep now. Mom, too. Elena appeared in the doorway. I'm here, sweetheart. Adrian smiled and settled back into sleep. Content for the first time in months. In the living room, Marcus and Elena sat across from each other, the weight of 5 years hanging between them. My lawyers are drawing up new custody papers, Marcus said. Joint custody 50-50. You'd have him half the time, I'd have him half the time. And I'd like to move you both into a better apartment. Something in a good school district with enough space. You can refuse if you want, but I'm not trying to buy you. I'm trying to make up for what I took. You can't just fix this with money, Marcus, I know. But I can give my son a stable home with his mother, and I can be part of his life in a way that doesn't destroy him. He leaned forward, his eyes meeting hers. I want to be his father, Elena. Really be his father. Not just the guy who buys him things and sees him on weekends. I want to go to his soccer games and help with homework and be there when he's scared or hurt or happy. And what about us? Elena asked quietly. Can you look at me without seeing betrayal? Marcus was silent for a long time. I had my investigators dig deeper into those photos after I found out about Adrian. I needed to understand everything. Elena tensed. David Martinez was helping you plan my birthday party. The photos were taken by someone at my company, a competitor who wanted to sabotage my merger deal that year. They knew if I was distracted by personal drama, I'd miss the deadline. He ran a hand through his hair. You were never unfaithful. You were planning a surprise party and I destroyed our marriage over a lie. A sob escaped Elena's throat. I tried to tell you. That night I tried so hard to explain. I know. I'm sorry. The words seemed inadequate for the enormity of what he'd done. I'm sorry for not listening. I'm sorry for throwing you out. I'm sorry for making you afraid to tell me about Adrian. I'm sorry for taking him from you. I'm sorry for 5 years of decisions that hurt everyone I should have been protecting. I'm sorry too, Elena whispered. I should have tried harder to reach you. I should have shown up at your office, made a scene if I had to. I let my hurt and pride keep Adrian from his father. We both made mistakes. Marcus moved to sit beside her on the worn couch, but Adrian didn't make any mistakes. He's perfect and he deserves better than what we've given him. He deserves parents who can put aside their past and work together for his future. Can we do that? Really? I'd like to try. Marcus hesitated, then reached for her hand, and maybe somewhere down the road, we could try to understand what we lost, what we threw away because we were both too hurt and proud to fight for it. Elena looked at their joined hands. You hated me for so long. I hated what I thought you'd done. But you're the mother of my child. You raised an incredible boy all by yourself. You're stronger than I ever gave you credit for. He paused. The truth is I never stopped loving you, Elena. I just buried it under anger and betrayal. And now? She looked up at him, hope flickering in her eyes for the first time. Now I'd like the chance to remember why I fell in love with you in the first place, if you'll let me. The next months were challenging but transformative. They established a routine. Adrian spent half the week with Elena in the spacious new apartment Marcus had helped her secure, and half the week with Marcus in his mansion. At first, the transitions were awkward, with stilted conversations and careful boundaries. But slowly, something shifted. Marcus showed up at Adrian's soccer games, where Elena already sat on the bleachers. They ended up sitting together, cheering together, celebrating together when Adrian scored his first goal. They started meeting for dinner on transition days, discussing Adrian's progress, his needs, his dreams. One evening, 6 months after the custody arrangement, Adrian looked between his parents and asked the question that had been building. Are you and Mom going to be together again? Marcus and Elena exchanged glances. Would you want that? Elena asked carefully. I like having both of you, but it would be better if we were all together all the time, like a real family. We are a real family, Marcus assured him. just a different kind. But the question lingered. Marcus had been thinking about it too. How Elena laughed at Adrian's jokes. How she'd relaxed around him, the fear and hurt slowly fading. How she'd forgiven him, even though he didn't deserve it. How he looked for excuses to extend their dinners to spend more time in her presence. 1 year after the custody hearing, Marcus asked Elena to dinner, without Adrian. "Is something wrong?" she asked immediately. "No, I wanted to talk to you. Just you." They went to a quiet restaurant, and over wine and pasta, Marcus finally said what had been building in his heart for months. "I was wrong about everything, Elena. Wrong to believe those photos. Wrong to shut you out. Wrong to take Adrian from you. But I was most wrong about thinking I could stop loving you." He reached across the table for her hand. "These past months, watching you with Adrian, working together to give him the best life possible, I've remembered everything I loved about you. Your strength, your kindness, the way you put Adrian first always. I don't deserve a second chance, but I'm asking for one anyway." Elena's eyes shimmered with tears. "Marcus, I'm not asking you to forget what I did. I'm not even asking you to forgive me completely. I'm just asking if you'd be willing to try again, to see if we can build something new from the ashes of what we lost." "I'm scared," Elena admitted. "What if it falls apart again? Then we'll put it back together. But this time we'll communicate. We'll listen. We'll fight for each other instead of against each other." He squeezed her hand. "I've learned something from losing you twice. Once through my own stupidity and once through watching what my actions did to Adrian. I learned that pride and anger are nothing compared to love. And I love you, Elena. I never stopped." Elena was quiet for a long moment, and Marcus braced himself for rejection. Then she smiled, a real smile, the kind that had made him fall for her a lifetime ago. "I love you too. I tried not to, tried to protect myself, but loving you is like breathing for me. I can't just stop even when I wanted to. So we try again?" "We try again, slowly, carefully, with Adrian at the center of everything. Always," Marcus promised. Their second beginning was nothing like their first. There was no whirlwind romance, no grand gestures. Instead, there were family dinners and movie nights and homework help. There were conversations that lasted until midnight, unpacking years of hurt and healing. There were apologies and forgiveness and the slow rebuilding of trust. 6 months later, Marcus proposed, not in a fancy restaurant or on a beach, but in Elena's living room with Adrian present. Because their family was the three of them, and any decision needed to include their son. "We're already a family," Marcus said, kneeling with the ring, "but I'd like to make it official. Elena, will you marry me again? Will you let me spend the rest of my life making up for the years I wasted?" "Yes," she said through happy tears. Adrian launched himself at both of them, and they collapsed in a laughing, crying heap on the floor. The wedding was small and intimate, with only close friends and family. Adrian served as best man and ring bearer, taking his job with utmost seriousness. When Marcus and Elena exchanged vows, new ones written from the heart, there wasn't a dry eye in the room. "I promise to listen," Marcus said, holding Elena's hands. "I promise to trust. I promise to love our son and any future children with everything I have. And I promise to never let pride or anger come between us again." "I promise to communicate," Elena replied. "I promise to fight for us instead of running. I promise to build a life with you based on honesty and love. And I promise that our family will always come first." They sealed their vows with a kiss, and Adrian cheered louder than anyone. Years later, as Marcus watched Elena and Adrian, now joined by a daughter, Sophia, playing in the backyard of the home they'd built together, he marveled at how close he'd come to losing everything that mattered. His business empire seemed insignificant compared to the wealth of love in this family. "Dad," Adrian called, now 10 years old and already showing signs of the brilliant man he'd become. "Come play with us." Marcus set aside his laptop without hesitation and joined his family in the grass, Sophia climbing onto his shoulders while Adrian and Elena plotted their next move in the elaborate game they'd invented. He'd learned the hardest way possible that some mistakes can be overcome, but it takes humility, effort, and genuine change. He'd learned that love isn't about winning or losing. It's about choosing each other, every single day, even when it's hard. Most importantly, he'd learned that the greatest wealth wasn't in his bank account or his business empire. It was in the laughter of his children, The smile of his wife and the family he'd almost destroyed but had been given the undeserved grace to rebuild. Sometimes, second chances come from the most broken places. And sometimes those second chances become even more beautiful than the original dream.